so many people are out there walking around with a sensitized nervous system, thinking they have a dysregulated nervous system. And that is not their fault. It is not your fault, because all of the information out there is like really close, because it is indicating that there is a nervous system issue going on. We're just kind of talking about and addressing the wrong one. The reason why I think this matters so much is because if you are sensitized and you continue doing dysregulation work, you are not only possibly not going to get better, but in my experience, in the experience of so many people I've talked to, you can actually begin making the problem worse. And I really don't say that to scare you. I say it because it's so important to me to help you understand why everything hasn't been working and why I went 20 years trying to figure all of this out and finally got to the root of why. And the root of why was I had a sensitized nervous system. But after desensitizing my nervous system, all of my chronic symptoms disappeared. And knowing which one you're dealing with is the whole thing, because the path out of sensitization is completely different. If you have dealt with ongoing chronic anxiety or really weird chronic physical symptoms like pain or illnesses or a bunch of different random diagnoses, you've tried everything to relieve yourself of these symptoms and nothing works, this may be the video that finally explains why that is. So today we're going to talk about 5 signs that kind of signal that your system has lost that flexibility, it has lost that capacity, and it has become more sensitive over time. Let's get into a quick definition of what is sensitization, because I think there's a lot of confusion out there, and it's my hope to kind of like demystify any confusion. What you need to understand is that a healthy nervous system has the ability to move through the full range of emotions: calm, excited, passionate, stressed. And as it moves through those things, it can keep moving. It doesn't get stopped or stuck. And so with sensitization, it isn't necessarily an issue with being too activated. It's when you lose that flexibility to move gracefully in between states, or when you're dealing with dysregulation to get stuck sometimes, but having that ability to return back to that baseline. So then the problem with sensitization becomes you're just always living at your full capacity. So one small thing can kind of tip you over that edge. So the first sign is that you have tried everything that you have ever heard of to get relief, and for some reason, nothing is working. It's either not sticking, or it's not lasting, or it's not making a dent at all. I'm talking different types of therapies, medication, meditation, different programs, different books, and maybe they do help for a minute, and maybe they give you some hope, but it just feels like you keep going back to square one, or like you're regressing. The thing is, if you're dealing with dysregulation, these tools actually work. They actually do a pretty good job of helping you move through whatever you're experiencing and coming back down to that baseline. But unfortunately, if you're sensitized, the relief that you get from those tools either doesn't exist or it doesn't stick. And you have to regulate over and over and over again because your system is set at such a high baseline that you would be using tools all the time because you're chronically living in this state of really high activation. But I really feel like this sign alone is often all you need to know what you're dealing with. That if it was dysregulation, then regulation tools would do the trick. If they aren't in any way, that's a really good sign that this is sensitization. You have to kind of realize that's also your nervous system telling you that maybe regulation and regulation tools isn't what your system needs right now. That can be helpful feedback to receive from your body where it's like, it's just not working. And this can be really hard because you can go a long time feeling like you are on the wrong path. Like it just must not be working because you're following this path that everyone talks about, but you don't realize there's actually a completely different path that's focused on a completely different issue, which is that we're not dealing anymore with something that is getting thrown out of its window of tolerance sometimes and getting stuck in that hyperarousal, that fight or flight, getting stuck in that hypoarousal of freeze. We're talking it's chronic, nonstop, all the time. Chronic anxiety, chronic physical symptoms, chronic pain, chronic illness is very different than just occasional dysregulation. I made a course specifically for people who are dealing with sensitization. So if that's something you want to go deeper into, I will link that in the description. Sign number 2 is that you don't come back after things calm down, after the perceived threat is gone. So whether that's like a stressful deadline, or an example I love to use is someone cuts you off in traffic and you almost get in an accident. A dysregulated system is going to get thrown off, and it's going to get thrown out of that normal window of tolerance. And then maybe in 10 or 15 minutes, maybe an hour, it's going to settle again. It's going to come back down once the threat, the actual real threat, has passed. And yeah, it may struggle with that sometimes, but not perpetually. It is not chronically in that state. But when you're sensitized, your body doesn't move through it. It stays there. It stays locked on long after the threat has passed, or it's throwing up alarms and stress signals even in the absence of an actual threat, which is a really big indicator of sensitization. So remember, with dysregulation, when life settles, your body and your nervous system do too. But when you're dealing with sensitization, the external stress can leave, but internally, you're still stuck with it. So you get to a point where nothing is actually wrong, but your system never gets the signal that it's time to move on. It's time to move to the next thing. It stays locked in the past often, and rest won't shift you the way that it used to. You used to be able to have something stressful, go and kind of decompress, rest, and your body's like, okay, we can settle back down. That is relevant with dysregulation. It's not as relevant with sensitization. When you're sensitized, you almost completely even lose the ability to rest, because you're having, adrenaline dumps and going into fight or flight when you go to take a nap, which was my experience for 2 years. Sign number 3 is you feel activated pretty much all the time for no real reason. So you deal with things like your heart racing and feeling on edge no matter what, feeling buzzy, feeling anxious, and there's nothing for you to attach it to. There's no real thing that caused the activation. It's just where your system lives now. When you deal with dysregulation, you can normally point to a clear trigger. Like, I got an email that really stressed me out. One of my friends or family texted me, can we talk? There is something that causes that activation to the system. But when you're sensitized, you can look around and say, okay, I'm safe. Everything is fine. But my body is acting like everything is not fine at all. My body is responding and my nervous system is interpreting that there is an actual emergency somewhere and we need to solve it. It is keeping you in that I'm being chased down a dark alley mode and you're literally just sitting on your couch. So in this case, it's not responding to an actual threat. It's actually stuck in a pattern of constantly responding all the time to things that aren't threatening at all. And this is a loop that you get caught in when you're dealing with sensitization. It is a loop that gets locked on. This is different than nervous system dysregulation. Sign number 4 is that your body reacts to things that shouldn't be a big deal. So you have something like a minor inconvenience or something that you didn't expect, and your body's like, all right, crisis mode is activated. Worst case scenario is activated. Or you have like a body sensation that you're not used to, maybe a new pain, maybe a new lump somewhere, and you absolutely spiral out every time, all the time. In fact, you're looking for things to spiral out on. And I think that the reason for this is that we feel so activated that our brain is like, what can I connect this to? This makes no sense. So then you have the tendency to hyper focus on what your body is doing. So be that pain, sensations, you can hyper focus on your thinking. But I do think that's a way for us to kind of match the activation to something real because it feels so real. And there may be things that never used to bother you that now feel like a lot. And not only a lot, they feel like way too much. Like, I cannot handle anything. I certainly cannot handle anything small, but for sure cannot handle anything big, anything real, any actual stress, because anything that happens tips you over. When it's just dysregulation, things that are big stressors are going to cause big reactions, and they may be overreactions. It's proportional because something is actually there being a threat and being a trigger. But when you're sensitized, small things or nothing at all tips you over, and it tips you over very quickly. Like, there's no room to move because you're always at that edge. So your heart skipping a beat could freak you out, being a little bit more fatigued. You're constantly weighing like, what's going on in my body? What caused this? How do I fix it? How do I make it go away? And the problem here is that your normal capacity has narrowed so much that there's barely any room before you get to that edge. And so everything feels just astronomical and like an emergency that needs to be solved. That's different than when you're just dealing with dysregulation. And sign number 5 is that you notice that a lot of your attention has moved onto your body and onto your health, and it has been pulled away from your actual life. You'll find that you're spending a lot of your mental energy monitoring your symptoms, trying to solve your symptoms, trying to find a fix, or trying to heal. And with dysregulation, you can notice symptoms and you can even use a tool. You could meditate, you could do some deep breathing, and that tends to actually help a lot. It tends to kind of just shift you right back into that normal window of tolerance that you live in. But when you're sensitized, you're constantly aware of your body. You notice any little micro shift, any kind of change, and you become hyper aware of that. There's this hypervigilance with your body. Part of you is always watching yourself and checking and monitoring what is it compared to yesterday. It's constant and it feels unrelenting. It really is it's a loop that has a really strong hold on people. And the hardest part about this is that you lose the ability to fully engage with your actual life because your system is on that high alert. So your life gets smaller and smaller. You pull away from the things that could be helpful for regulation, things like connection, things like joy. Everything shrinks so much that your main focus and the only thing you have the energy and attention for is what's going on with your body, is what's going on with your symptoms or your pain or your thoughts or your feelings. You become very you focused, and that pulls away from things like co-regulation and things that would be helpful. We get so far away from a life of connection and joy and fulfillment as the system gets more and more sensitized. So just to review all 5 of these signs, sign 1 is you're trying everything and nothing is working. Sign 2 is that your system does not seem to come back down after things calm down. Number 3 is that you feel activated for no clear reason that you can attach that activation to. Number 4 is your body overreacts to things that should not be a big deal. And the last one, number 5, is you are more focused on your body and your symptoms than you are on your actual life. So if you related to 3 or more of those signs, you are probably not dealing with your standard run-of-the-mill dysregulation. The dysregulation that most of the tools and the methods out there are catered to. Your system has lost its flexibility. It has lost its capacity, and it's getting stuck instead of moving through the emotions and moving through the patterns that a human body goes through. And this is a pattern that develops over time. I really do see this as a scale, and we can slowly start moving down the scale from a place of being regulated to being dysregulated to being dysregulated so chronically that we are now sensitized. And then continuing down the scale is severe sensitization, which can be a case where you're dealing with some sort of chronic illness or autoimmune condition. So the goal here is using principles that can help you develop more range, more capacity, because that is the difference I see between dysregulation and sensitization. It's a capacity issue. And if you have such little capacity, you shouldn't be using that capacity on tools that are going to be kind of like coping mechanisms for the moment when you are needing to cope 24/7 because you're dealing with 24/7 symptoms or issues or dysfunction. So if you have felt really stuck trying to regulate your way out of chronic symptoms and it hasn't worked, it really is good news to know that your system is just sensitized. If you live your life in this state of chronic fear and inability to move with life at all, like you feel so rigid in what you're able to do or not able to do, or the way life affects you, like you literally feel sensitive to the world around you, sensitization is what we're dealing with. And the good news is there was a way to desensitize your nervous system, and it includes responding differently to what you're experiencing instead of reaching for a tool to make what you're feeling go away. And what's important to me is to let people know that there is a different alternative path that, to be honest, is going to get you on the path to where nervous system regulation techniques are going to work so well for you. But we have to get your system desensitized before we move on to that. Everyone's situation and experience is a little bit different. So I did create a quiz that helps you figure out, is your nervous system sensitized or just dysregulated? It'll ask you some really common questions to get to the root of it, but will also give you the opportunity to share about your personal experience, symptoms, what you've tried, anything you want to add so that you get a personalized result. I'm going to link that in the description. It's really worth taking that quiz, and make sure you like and subscribe to this channel because I talk about this stuff all the time. And let me know in the comments, of the 5 signs, which one did you relate to the most? I'll see you guys next time.